Do the Sharks need a third goalie for some insurance? And who's potentially available as free agency has all but died at this point?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at The Reef, also the co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be digging into some potential goalie insurance for the Sharks. Looking at guys who kind of as that third goalie who can play mostly in the AHL, but if you need him to come up and play a couple games here in a pinch, they're able to do so. So we're going to dig into why the Sharks should look to add somebody here and look at some potential names that could be out there again, free agency is all but wrapped up, but there's still some names out here as teams are filling out kind of their NHL/AHL rosters. So before we get to all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost rate bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. So looking at the kind of current Shark/Barracuda goalie situation, right? You have the Mackenzie Blackwood coming back, Vitek Vanecek, who the Sharks acquired at the trade deadline last year for Kaapo Kähkönen. And then, of course, in the Barracuda, you have Georgi Romanov and Magnus Crona, both of whom played NHL games last season. And, I think if Mike Grier wanted to kind of ride with those four guys and say, okay, this is it, this is what we're going to kind of go with, I could totally, I could see that. But I wouldn't be surprised if, and Mike Grier even said it himself, of looking at potentially bringing in another goalie here. And this is kind of a guy who can play, going to spend the majority of the time in the AHL. But if you have an injury to Blackwood or Vanecek, he can kind of come up and give you a couple starts. Maybe, here or there, maybe get like 5 starts out of him out of a season. Nothing super crazy, right? But you're trying to kind of give yourself some insurance. That way, guys like Magnus Crona and Georgi Romanov aren't subjected to what happened to them last year, right? And Romanov played well in his kind of when he kind of came off, but guy, like Magnus Crona definitely struggled in his time in the NHL. He had a good start here and there, but for the most part, struggled and both those guys kind of need to continue to play AHL games as they kind of get used to, for Romanov, right, getting used to North American ice, and then for Magnus Crona, right, spent the year kind of getting ready, used to the pro game. But both those guys, right, you don't want to kind of keep having them come up and getting shell-shocked or just shelled, basically, and ruining any confidence that they start to kind of build up playing with the Barracuda. So, and you look at Blackwood and Vitek Vanecek, their career, right? Blackwood played he played 44 games last year, which was the second most in his career, the most since pre-COVID times. The past couple of seasons, he had dealt with a lot of injuries where he only played 22 and 25 games and kind of lost his starting spot. So, right, and even last year, Blackwood got dinged up here and there, and Kaapo Kähkönen kind of had to take the reins for a little while. Looking at Vitek Vanecek, who's been much healthier until last year. You look last year, he played 32 games with 29 starts. Year before, he had 52 games with 48 starts, 42 games the year before that. So he's been a little bit more durable, but again, he did have a kind of a season-ending injury here. So the hope is, again, you're looking for somebody who you think can give you a little bit of a, again, if you need a game or two out of the season without maybe kind of putting your young goalies out there to potentially get shelled again, which again, we think the Sharks are going to be a little bit better, but they're probably still going to have the occasional dud of a game, right? That's just, especially when you have a lot of young players, you're going to have those duds of games, unfortunately. And with the way the Barracuda have been kind of putting together their team, like, wouldn't be surprised if, this team, Barracuda team, they got some really quality veterans. We'll spend some time here soon kind of digging into the Barracuda's offseason a little bit more. But like, this team could hopefully potentially start to be much more competitive, which is, I think, something we just want to see out of the Barracuda, is them just being more competitive and more consistent, which was a big issue with them last year, of just the consistency, right? They were consistently inconsistent, right? Put together a win followed by a loss, put together a win followed by a loss, put together a win followed by, like, they couldn't string together wins. So that's why I think getting a goalie who can help out the young players, especially in the AHL, if Romanov and or Magnus Crona are kind of going through a tough spell, especially in the AHL where there's so many back-to-backs, right? How many times is it Friday, Saturday night, game on Friday night, game on Saturday night, right? Or game on Saturday night, game on Sunday afternoon. Like this, with the kind of weird schedule that AHL has, having a veteran goalie who's kind of played plenty of games, has some NHL experience, which I think is, helpful to have one of those guys, a veteran type of guy, right? Your Aaron Dell like player who can come in, play a couple games when needed, be good, be a good locker room guy in the AHL, and when things are kind of, and just be that, kind of be a good mentor for the younger guys, and also give you at least a competitive fight when called upon in the NHL. So, and it's not going to like, this is going to be a vet min type of deal. You're going to have to sign to an NHL contract and push this player through waivers, but like there's so many goalies out on the market right now, or like, I don't know, there's teams like they have a lot of teams have this type of guy. Like there's if said goalie goes on waivers, I'm not going to be super worried about him potentially being claimed unless there's an injury in training camp or something like that, which does happen. But I think for the Sharks, like, it's worth the risk there. And if not, you can always kind of maybe trade for one, right? You got Devin Cooley at the trade deadline last year to kind of come in and be the backup goalie, while you're to kind of, again, help Magnus Crona and help Georgi Romanov, let those guys kind of play in with the Barracuda. That way they're not getting crushed night in and night out, as we saw from plenty of games from San Jose. So yeah, I think it's, other than right shot defenseman, which I still think is a huge issue for the Sharks. And I think that's their number one priority, is to try to find a right shot puck moving defenseman. I still think this is pretty high up on the to-do list for Mike Grier, as he tries to Mike Grier and Joe Will, to try to find a goalie you can kind of slide in and slide out wherever you need him. In worst case scenarios, then maybe you have to send Crona or wait to send Magnus Crona or Georgi Romanov to the ECHL, like, to get some games. That's fine. That's what the ECHL is for, is to make sure that some of these guys get games. So not worried about that. Like, those guys are still young enough where you just want them playing as much as possible. But again, not put into a position where they're kind of in a bad spot night in and night out playing NHL games. So, because I don't think either one of those guys are quite ready to take on an NHL load here yet. So we'll look at some guys who I have three guys who I kind of looked at who I think could be realistic options. And we have two guys who are a little bit on the younger side and one guy who's a kind of veteran type of player. And then we'll look at some of the other names out there that could be potential options as well. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're just speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With the eBay Guarantee Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, so let's look at some potential goalies. And I have three who I think make a lot of sense. And we're going to start with one, Ivan Prosvetov, who spent last year playing in the Colorado system. So Ivan Prosvetov, 6'5", 189 pounds, 25 years old. So he kind of fits that Mike Grier big athletic kind of mold, right? In the AHL with Colorado, the Colorado Eagles, he had 21 games, 2.33 goals against, 921 save percentage with 550 saves. Got some NHL games as well last year. He played 11 games with the Avalanche, 316 goals against average, 895 save percentage, had 26 goals allowed. Expected goals allowed was 26.87. So goals saved above expected was 0.87 and high danger save 813 high danger saves. So pretty solid numbers, I think, for that's like kind of the numbers you're looking for, right? Is I know Colorado is a much better team, but I think a guy like Prosvetov, who's 25, still kind of in that, maybe that development range, and maybe he's kind of hit that where he's at, and that's an high-end AHL goalie, low-end NHL player, kind of that tweener type of goalie. But I think for the Sharks Barracuda, like, he'd be a huge addition for the Barracuda, who have a lot of young defensemen, right? I know it would probably hurt the Romanov Magnus Crona potential, but I think he's just a better goalie. And if we want to see a more competitive Barracuda team, I think Prosvetov is a really, really nice fit for San Jose and kind of what they're trying to put together here. So he's still, as of I'm recording right now, still has not been signed by anyone, which I think is a little interesting. And but I still think that is a player who I think could be kind of one of those guys where if you need him to play a couple of NHL games, I don't think the lights are going to be too big for him. But I think he's going to spend his time in the AHL and elevate the Barracuda in their situation. And, if Romanov and Crona need to kind of fight for that backup spot, then so be it, right? We've seen Mike Grier, say we want guys to earn their jobs. And, I think that's fine. They're still going to play a ton of games just because of the AHL schedule. But, let those guys kind of continue to fight it out and let those guys kind of continue to battle. And if Prosvetov gets called upon to play NHL games, right? If you can get basically 900 save percentage out of him, I think you're feeling pretty happy about that. Again, you're not kind of DOA if you're rolling Prosvetov out to play a couple games for you on the Sharks. So another guy who could be a potential option, a much older player, that would be Magnus Hellberg. So he's 6'6", 209 pounds, 33 years old. Last year in the AHL between Charlotte and Wilkes-Barre, had 27 games, 275 goals against average, 904 save percentage, 656 saves. Also played some NHL games as well. Played with the Penguins. He played 3 games, 250 goals against average, 922 save percentage. 5 goals allowed in 3 games that's not too bad. 688 expected goals allowed, and he's goals saved above expected was almost 2 at 1.88. The high danger save of 800. More, I think, with Hellberg, I think more of the Aaron Dell type of player, where much older, right? I think he kind of knows what his role is there. Would, I still think, help elevate. Probably more of a shared role, I think, in the AHL compared to Prosvetov, who I think would be more of kind of the starter for the Barracuda. I think Hellberg would kind of be more of a like the 1A, 1B with if it's Romanov or Crona, whichever. I kind of give Romanov right now. I give Romanov the edge because I think he's played better, especially the way the end of the season went. I think Romanov's got another gear that he's going to find here really soon. So compared to Crona, but the Hellberg though would more the Aaron Dell type, right? Of good veteran. He's going to be good in the locker room. He's going to help out. Assume he's going to be able to help out the team or help out the young guys, kind of, teach those guys whatever they need him to do. And then if he needs to come up and play in the NHL, it's not going to be embarrassment. He's not going to poop his pants and give up 7 goals and on 12 shots type of scenario, right? He's going to be a professional out there. And again, that is what you're looking for. Just in worst case scenario is if Blackwood, who has struggled with injuries, and Vitek, Vanecek, who's coming off a season-ending injury, just can you have a professional out there? And I think Hellberg would definitely kind of do that. So next guy here, Adam Scheel, 6'3", 190 pounds. So maybe not quite the height that you're, Mike Grier, maybe not the size that you're kind of looking for, or at least Mike Grier seems to be looking for. 25, played a ton of games in the AHL last year, 42 games, 284 goals against average, 907 save percentage, 1101 saves on Chicago. Just as a reminder, Chicago last year did not have an NHL affiliate, so he is yet to make his NHL debut. That doesn't quite click that check that box there of as a guy who can kind of come in and play NHL games, but I still think like that Chicago team was not very good last year, right? They missed the playoffs. And he posted pretty solid numbers for a team that, again, was not kind of what we expect from the Chicago Wolves team. I know they kind of dealing with some issues of not having an actual NHL kind of mothership team that's been fixed now between them and the Carolina Hurricanes. They kind of got a lot of their talent gutted after making a championship run. Of course, losing Ryan Warsofsky a couple of years ago, et cetera, like kind of part of the natural, that team taking a dip. But those are really still pretty solid numbers on a bad team. And he played a ton of games. And when you're a guy like that, like I'm kind of curious to see like there's something there, I think, with him, and if he could potentially diamond in the rough type of guy. But again, he's going to come in. I think you kind of be your starter for the Barracuda, and if he gets, like he's played enough pro games where I think if he would get into the NHL and have to start a couple games, I don't expect things to kind of the wheels to fall off. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. You never know what happens when you get to the NHL. But I still think that's a guy I'd be willing to bet on, just because if he's played a lot of pro games so far, even if he has not played NHL games. And even looking at like kind of his path, like played a lot in college, played a lot in the AHL. I don't know why. I have a feeling, just got a feeling about a guy like that. He's played 87 games so far over 4 seasons between the Texas Stars and the Chicago Wolves in the AHL. So I think like that probably deserves a chance to maybe see the NHL. So those are 3 guys who I would be like, sign me up for any of those 3 guys, because I think they would kind of fill that role. All of them a little bit different, right? Prosvetov and Scheel maybe a little bit younger, maybe a little bit of upside to potentially tap into. Hellberg, definitely the Aaron Dell veteran type of player. But I think all 3 of those guys would, 1, help the Barracuda, and 2, hold down the fort while you waited for Vanecek or Blackwood to get healthy. So we'll look at some of the just other names out there. It gets very bleak, very fast here. And if, just throwing some names out there. So we'll get to those here in just 1 second. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs are now done, we have fewer games. These sports aren't sportsing like I want them to, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right. So kind of the best of the rest here. And it's a little tough. I'm not gonna lie, it gets a little tough here. So looking at guys who were UFAs last year, who are now like actually guys who are UFAs last year who actually played or actually had an NHL game. It's brutal. Like it is it's brutal here. So you're looking at pulling up Cap Friendly while we still have Cap Friendly right now. So these are the guys who played NHL games as goalies, who are UFAs, complete. Like Antti Raanta, 35, played 24 games last year. I don't see him kind of in the AHL type of role. Kevin Lankinen, maybe he's 29, but right, maybe he kind of slides into that role there. Martin Jones, we've lived that experiment before, and the Sharks are still paying him to just not be here, so I don't really see that one. Magnus Hellberg, who we just talked about. Michael Hutchinson, was also 34, maybe kind of in the, like Hellberg could be a potential fit there of a guy who just wants to kind of continue his career, play in the AHL, like doesn't really, he played last year with 1 game last year with the Red Wings and played a bunch of games with the Grand Rapids. We're at a 892 save percentage and 289 goals against average, and 32 games with the Grand Rapids. So another one of the kind of Hellberg older type of guys, who could be a potential addition there. And then Malcolm Subban, who played last year, 1 game with the Columbus Blue Jackets, where he had 914 save percentage and 3 goals against. Split time in the AHL between the Springfield Thunderbirds and the Cleveland Monsters. Did not pose great numbers with the Cleveland Monsters at the end of the season. Decent numbers with the Thunderbirds. We had 31 games and 294 goals against and 907 save percentage. So, kind of another one that's a potential option there. But as you can see, like goalies are in tough kind of, they try to grab them as best they can. So those are all the goalies who are like UFAs who are out there. Some of the RFAs, who are no longer with their, so you have Carter Hart, who, of course, that whole scenario, he is right as nuclear waste. Jeremy Swayman, who, of course, and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, excuse me. Those guys, they still have their rights owned by of course, by the Bruins and the Sabres, and they don't like those guys are like NHL starters, or Swayman's like an amazing, like those guys are NHL players, right? They're kind of not what we are looking for. And then you have Ivan Prosvetov, who we just talked about, who is a UFA because of Group 6, didn't accumulate enough NHL games, kind of like E2 Mackenzie, who was kind of in the same spot. So that's why he's a free agent. So those are like the guys who played NHL games. That's it. Those are the guys. So if you're looking for more AHL only type of players, so Tony Angdraktis, who I'm butchered his last name. Tony, who does, if you know anything about AHL, he's like the guy with the AHL coverage, rents Inside AHL. He does a really nice big board kind of free agency, and like his goal, even going through his top 15 goalies, like it is also very much picked over just because teams are trying to find goalies, that could be potential additions here. So, and he has like Yuri Patera, who played in Henderson last year. He had 25 games played last year with a .903 save percentage. But again, these guys are kind of still in that same, like, probably AHL guys, and maybe they could play in the NHL. We're still, that's yet to be seen. So I'm not, like that doesn't really, I want someone who can kind of play in the NHL, and you can at least get a couple starts out of them. Of course, our old friend Aaron Dell is still out there. He played with Ontario last year. I know he's been working out in San Jose still. His family, he lives in the Bay Area. Maybe a reunion there if things get desperate, but he could also be, like we saw last year, a lot of, like, he got a PTO and earned a contract that way. So that could be another type of option for him. And, again, it just gets really kind of thin really quickly here with guys who you think can be NHL, at least play a couple NHL games here. So Prosvetov is probably the guy I would be like, yeah, that's the guy I kind of feel like there's a chance there, because there could be something extra that we don't really know with him. And he could be, probably not, but he could be, maybe has another level to go as he's kind of hitting that age 25, 26, where goalies are really kind of hitting their peaks because they do take longer. And Hellberg, a guy like Hellberg, who I think, again, more like that Aaron Dell scenario where he's just going to kind of come in, do what's asked. He's going to be a good guy in the locker room and help out some of those younger guys. So, goalies get it's very, very it's very sparse out there, at least when it comes to available talent that's like played in NHL games. It's very, very it's very thin out there when you're trying to find somebody. So that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back tomorrow. Probably talk about some winners and losers from free agency. So look at specific Sharks players and which guys were helped the most by free agency in the draft, and which guys were maybe hurt because of some of the moves Mike Grier and the Sharks made. So we'll dig into that tomorrow. I'll probably start to dig into the draft class here soon, and kind of get to know some of these guys a little bit better. So make sure you guys are following wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole. Until tomorrow, bye, friends.